Wow, this is awesome. I wonder how these games will look 20 years from now. Wait, what is this? What is happening with my TV? Is this a video game trailer transmitting from the future? Wow, this looks better than real life. Look at all this spectacle. I wouldn't have imagined such improvement even in my wildest dreams.
Dragon's Dogma 2 is an open-world action RPG where we play as the Arisen, an immortal being who's personally modeled by us, the gamers, that also has the power to command a mystical army of autistic people who the game lovingly calls pawns. Because of these magnificent abilities, the Arisen is automatically crowned as the sovereign of the kingdom where he or she resides in, and if you ask me, this is a pretty sweet deal. So, how does one become the Arisen? Well, a giant flying lizard appears out of nowhere and starts to redecorate the world in his signature slightly charred look. And in the process, if a random humanoid starts tickling him in the right way, the dragon eats the heart of said humanoid, which turns him or her into the Arisen. With the Arisen rule set out of the way, what do I think about DD2's actual story? It's nothing special really. It's just a standard narrative about a group of aristocrats plotting to dethrone the player character and his or her eventual re-arising as the rightful ruler of the kingdom. Something that also drags down the storytelling is the fact that the majority of the important plot elements are given to us in the game's bland-looking dialogue mode, which is really a shame because the fully fledged cutscenes were very well directed and their visual fidelity is almost at the level of a pre-rendered CG movie. The only criticism that I have about the cutscenes is that they're really short, and the opportunity to feast your eyes upon them comes once in a blue moon, which is quite unfortunate for obvious reasons. In a few points of the main narrative, you're given the opportunity to shape the story with your own decisions, which results in a few different endings, and it's kinda neat I guess, but these moments are way too infrequent for the implementation of this mechanic to truly feel satisfying. In the story critique segment of this video, we've concluded that storytelling isn't exactly Dragon's Dogma 2's strong suit, but the game is actually quite competent at selling us the traveling party of adventurers trope through its gameplay. The grand adventure starts with the extremely granular character creator, in which you mold the appearance of the Arisen and your main pawn, and after spending an eternity on playing around with the sliders, you'll then have to choose the respective vocations/classes. At this point of your playthrough, you'll have 4 vocations to choose from, like the Archer, which specializes in long-range attacks using a bow and arrow, the Fighter, which excels in melee combat, deftly wielding a sword and shield, the Mage, which is used to offer support to their party in various ways, like launching magic attacks, offering enhancements that bolster the weapons of party members, to casting healing spells. And last but not least, yours truly's vocation of choice, the Thief, which deals rapid and consecutive attacks with deadly speed and exhibits outstanding mobility. Later on in your adventure, you'll have the opportunity to unlock 6 more advanced vocations, but only if you finish off the right quests that will lead you to the meisters of said vocations. Speaking of side quests, they are absolutely everywhere, literally. On every street corner, there's a person eager to send your risen ass on questing. And as you're questing for this one dude, there's a high chance that on your way, you'll meet some other dude, itching to throw his burdens onto you. And before you know it, it's been 12 hours since you booted up this game, and you haven't done a single main story mission. What I love about some of the side quests in Dragon's Dogma 2 is that they're not as straightforward as in most open world games, in a sense that you're not always given a marker on your map that immediately tells you where to go, which forces you to read the quest descriptions and use your brain a little and investigate, which makes the quest to be much more memorable experiences. Some of them even have multiple endings, depending on your performance. It also helps that questing is done in a vast and truly organic open world, which features two distinct regions, overpopulated with NPCs, player-created pawns, bandits, and a huge number of different species of wildlife and monsters to fend against, with the use of your fighting skills or the environment itself. The game also has a weather system and a day and night cycle, and they are not just simple set dressings either, they actually affect the gameplay. When it rains, for example, you get infected by the drench status effect, which
prevents you from becoming tarred and reduces the damage taken from fire attacks. It also means that lightning attacks will leave you benumbed, and ice attacks will make you icebound.
And it's in the darkness of the night when the more vicious / demonic creatures come out of the woodwork, which makes the already risky world traversal even more dangerous. If you remember to pack your camping kit, that's when it's most advisable to look for a camping spot, cook yourself a juicy piece of goblin meat, and give yourself a little shut-eye, which rewards you with some buffs, and it also fully replenishes your health bar. But that's only if the local griffin approves of your decision, of course. A safer place to stay for the night would be an inn, or if you're not spending all your money on equipment, like yours truly, you can buy yourself a house. These places are also not 100% secure though, because the monsters can wander into towns and start wreaking havoc all around them, which kinda sucks ducks. But it's also undeniably cool to see such scenarios be created by the complex underlying systems of the game itself and not be purposefully scripted by the developers. Among these complex underlying systems is also the mega controversial mechanic called the Dragon's Plague, which is essentially a disease that affects only the pawns and gives them glowing red eyes and boosts their aggro. If not dealt with in a timely manner, it can result in the affected pawn massacring an entire town, which, needless to say, it's not good for your progress. How do you deal with this situation? Well, first off, don't hire pawns with glowing red eyes, since, as I've mentioned before, this is the most obvious sign of infection. If somehow one of your pawns gets infected, baptize them and then resurrect them from a ripstone. As for the dead NPCs, unfortunately, you'll have to use your precious life stones and revive them. Look, even though I can see why people are upset about the inclusion of such a punishing mechanic, I don't think that it's such a big deal, because its discombobulating effect is, at its strongest, only the first time that it happens to you. But as soon as you learn how to deal with the Dragon's Plague, it becomes just another inconvenience, which I personally saw as another layer of challenge to a game whose overarching theme of its gameplay is that things almost never go as you planned them.
P.S. My master forgot to tell you about the game's slightly cumbersome fast travel systems. System number 1 is ox car riding, which is cheap, but you'll have to look for the right ox car driver to take you to the checkpoint you desire, because they all have fixed routes, and they are not always available at the car stop. On top of that, they often get attacked, which doesn't really make them the safest option to cut down on your walking mileage. System number 2 is the port crystal system, in which you use fairy stones that teleport you to the port crystal of your choosing, of which there are 2 that are placed by the developers, and the rest you find by exploring the map, or you can buy them from a merchant, and you can hand place them wherever you see fit. My master imagines that most humans won't be too keen on the fast travel systems present in Dragon's Dogma 2. But he personally doesn't mind them, because he enjoyed exploring the map by foot and very rarely fast traveled.
Well guys, the verdict is simple. Dragon's Dogma 2 looks good. But what AAA game doesn't these days, right? The map is huge, and you can see pretty far off into the distance. And, as you can see for yourselves, the vistas are absolutely breathtaking. But even though the game looks good, I still have a couple of complaints involving the global illumination and the reflections. The game has an option for ray-traced lighting, and in a lot of the cases, it looks great. Except when you're running in a grassy field. That's when the technique exhibits weird shimmering artifacts. And given the fact that half of the map is composed of grassy fields exclusively, it's not a good look. I also think that the day and night cycle is a bit of a downgrade compared to the first game, which somehow managed to perfectly communicate the mood of every single part of the day, even though it's obviously technically inferior to its sequel. I think that it all comes down to the fact that Dragon's Dogma 2 tries to mimic how the world looks when seen through a camera lens, which overexposes the sky a little bit. And, on top of that, it also uses a greenish filter, which made it kinda hard to tell what time of day it is. The result from all of that was me staying out of town for too late, and in the Dragon's Dogma series, nightfall can mean a death sentence. As for the reflections, the game makes use of a screen space solution, but the effect is way too low res, and it breaks down way too easily, which is not really surprising, since the game is running on Capcom's proprietary RE engine, which always had a problem rendering this effect. The use of the number 2 after a title of a game never felt more appropriate to me than in the case of Dragon's Dogma II, because the game basically offers more of what its prequel had, but slightly better executed, at least in most cases. Even though I loved the game, I would have loved it even more if the complaints that I had about the story of the original Dragon's Dogma didn't carry over to it. Granted, the cutscenes in Dragon's Dogma 2 look way better compared to the original, but that doesn't really mitigate the core problems of the franchise's storytelling. However, the duology conveys the feeling of adventure through its gameplay so well that it's more than enough for me to sing its praises. The gigantic world that the game is set in is incredibly organic, and danger lurks in every corner. But thankfully, getting rid of said danger is very fun and satisfying to do. The game is also filled to the brim with things to see and do, and I would suggest you to take your time with it and restrain yourself from rushing through the game's main storyline, because it's when you start to thoroughly explore and immerse yourself in the dangerous world of Dragon's Dogma 2 that you can truly appreciate the game's brilliant game design. Thank you guys for watching, and if I manage to make another video, I hope I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a nice day!